this deep dive,
Yeah.
it tackles a topic that some might find a little sensitive.
Okay.
It's autism and food stealing behavior.
Right.
And you've given us a really thought-provoking article to kind of dig into today.
Yes.
And I think it's something that, I'm ready to understand better.
Yeah.
It feels like a conversation that, we should be having more openly, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think, it's definitely something that's more common than a lot of people realize.
Right.
And approaching it with empathy, I think, is, really the key.
Yeah.
Families often struggle with this, unaware that it can be something that's, pointing to very specific challenges that individuals with autism face.
And the article really emphasized this idea that for people with autism, taking food is rarely intentional.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, I think, it really boils down to the way that their brains are wired.
Okay.
The article mentions impulse control as being a major factor.
Yeah.
So, imagine, if you will, your absolute favorite food sitting right there in front of you.
Okay.
Now, imagine that your brain has difficulty putting on the brakes when you have that impulse to just take it.
Oh.
That's kind of the daily reality that many autistic individuals face.
No, it's not a simple matter of willpower. Like there's an actual neurological component at play.
Exactly. And I think it goes beyond just even just wanting the food.
Okay.
Sensory processing differences also play a huge role in this as well.
Sensory processing. That's a good segue to the next point in the article.
Okay.
How does that tie into the food and behavior?
Well, so, think about how certain textures or tastes
Right.
can be really overpowering for you or for me.
Yeah.
Even painful if you're particularly sensitive to it.
Yeah.
For someone with autism, food can just be this minefield of these really intense experiences.
Yeah.
Some might crave very specific foods because of the way that they feel,
Right.
while others might find most foods completely unappealing because it's just too much sensory overload for them. And all of this really limits what they can comfortably eat.
That makes me think about picky eaters in a whole new light. I never really considered how sensory overload could be driving some of those preferences.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a whole different way of, experiencing the world.
Right.
And then, imagine, on top of all of those challenges, not even having the words to express, what you need in that moment.
And that's where those communication barriers come in.
Yeah.
Right. The article touched on that as well.
Precisely because if you can't communicate you're hungry or ask for the food that you need, taking, it might feel like the only option.
Yeah.
It's not about being naughty. It's
Right.
just about, them trying to meet a basic need.
Interesting. It really kind of, puts things in perspective, right?
It does.
It's not defiance. It's like this combination of these deeply ingrained differences.
Right.
But knowing all this, like, what can families actually do?
Right.
The article mentioned some, practical strategies.
Yeah, it really emphasizes a two-pronged approach. So you've got positive reinforcement and then environmental adjustments.
Okay.
And both can make a world of difference.
Let's start with positive reinforcement. What does that actually look like in this context?
So instead of focusing on punishing the food stealing, you actively reward the behavior you want to see.
Okay.
So you praise them for asking for a snack,
Okay.
for waiting their turn, for
Right.
using their words to ask for what they need.
Okay.
You could even set up like a reward chart,
Right.
for consistently making good choices around food.
So it's about, proactively teaching and reinforcing the right behavior rather than just reacting to the wrong one.
Exactly.
I like
That
that.
builds, those positive associations with food, with eating.
Right.
And I think most importantly, it helps, the child feel successful
Okay.
instead of constantly being reprimanded.
And what about the environment itself?
Sure.
What kind of adjustments, can we make in the environment that can make a difference here?
So think about it this way. If you're trying to, cut back on sugar,
Okay.
is it easier to do with a pantry full of cookies or with, healthier options in sight?
Right. Point taken.
Right. So for someone with sensory sensitivities,
Yeah.
with impulse control challenges, having those tempting trigger foods,
Right.
constantly within reach, it's like setting them up for this constant internal battle.
Yeah. It's like you're asking for it to happen almost.
Exactly.
Right.
So keeping those trivia foods, out of sight
Okay.
or stored in, a less accessible spot
Yeah.
can be really helpful.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Are there other examples of, environmental adjustments that we could make that come to mind?
Creating a designated snack area, I think, is another great strategy.
Okay.
Having that specific place where snacks are kept
Yeah.
and consumed adds an element of predictability and routine.
which we know is especially important for individuals with autism.
Absolutely.
That routine can be so grounding
Yeah, it reduces anxiety around food.
because they know what to expect and when to expect it.
Now, even with all these strategies, the article really emphasized that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
Why is that so important to remember?
Because every individual with autism is unique.
Okay.
What works for one might be a complete disaster for another.
Right.
Their sensory sensitivities are different. Their communication styles, their triggers,
Right.
they're all going to be different.
So a cookie-cutter approach is not going to work.
Exactly.
All right.
This is where working with a healthcare professional who really understands autism can be invaluable. They can
Okay.
help you tailor the strategies to that individual's needs.
So it becomes this team effort then.
Absolutely.
You've got the family, you've got the caregivers, and then you've got the professionals all working together.
Working together.
And that kind of brings us to the heart of the matter, right?
Yeah.
It's about more than just managing behavior. It's about truly supporting autistic individuals.
Right. It's like we're shifting the focus away from just trying to control behavior
Yeah,
and more towards creating this environment of understanding and support.
absolutely. I think the article really highlights how important, that holistic approach is
Yeah.
and how important it is to involve both, family and professionals in that process.
So what does that actually look like, practically speaking?
Sure.
What can families and caregivers do on a daily basis, to
Right.
really build that supportive environment at home?
Well, I think, structure is key.
Okay.
Having predictable routines for meals and snacks.
Right.
That makes a huge difference because it reduces anxiety.
Yeah.
They know what to expect and when to expect it.
Right.
And instead of, battling over a limited menu, try offering a variety of healthy options.
Okay.
Maybe broaden their palate a bit and you might be surprised at what they'll try.
Yeah, it's about working with their sensory profile,
Yeah,
not against it,
exactly.
which I think is so important.
And remember those communication barriers we talked about earlier?
Right.
Visual aids can be absolute game changers here.
What?
Having a visual schedule
Right.
with pictures of mealtimes, snacks, even the steps involved in asking for food.
Right.
That makes a world of difference.
It just makes that whole process so much clearer and more accessible,
Exactly.
regardless of their verbal abilities, really.
Exactly. And I think above all, patience.
Right.
Learning new ways of navigating food and communication.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Of course.
Celebrate the small victories.
Right.
And, remember that setbacks, they're a normal part of the process.
They are for all of us, right?
Exactly.
The article also mentioned the role of professionals. Like,
Mhm.
how can professionals be a part of this support network?
Yeah, professionals like registered dietitians can be invaluable
Okay.
because they can help create, meal plans that are tailored
Right.
to both the nutritional needs of the individual
Okay.
and their sensory sensitivities.
So you've got, the nutrition expert in your corner
Right.
to help navigate those food aversions and make sure that they're getting what they need nutritionally.
Exactly. And then, you also have the role of behavior therapists.
Okay.
And they can really dig deeper into the why behind the behavior.
Okay.
What are the individual's specific triggers?
Yeah.
How do they communicate their needs?
Right.
And from there, they can develop these really customized strategies.
Okay.
Whether it's, positive reinforcement techniques or teaching alternative ways to communicate.
And it strikes me that, while the article really focused on children, these challenges don't magically disappear in adulthood, do they?
That's such a crucial point.
Right.
Imagine navigating, workplaces, social events, even dating
Oh, exactly.
with these challenges.
Yeah.
The need for understanding and support, but doesn't have an expiration date.
So how do we as a society, bridge that gap
Right.
and better support
Mm.
autistic individuals of all ages who face these challenges?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing that these behaviors stem from neurological differences, not a lack of character.
Yeah.
And from there, we can advocate for, more inclusivity in our communities, in our
yeah.
workplaces. We
Yeah.
can challenge the stigma, educate ourselves,
Absolutely.
and create environments where these individuals feel safe and supported just being themselves.
I love that that's a really powerful call to action.
Yeah.
And to our listener, we've only really scratched the surface of what is a very complex topic today.
Yeah.
But hopefully this deep dive has sparked some curiosity.
Yeah.
Keep exploring,
Yeah.
with the resources that we mentioned.
Absolutely.
And let's all just do our part to build a more inclusive world.
Well said. I agree.
This was great. Thank you so much for diving in with us today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.